Coming to you live from a cabin deep in the heart of the Canadian wilderness. Turn down the lights, get yourself a drink, and let's settle in for tonight's broadcast.
Hello everyone, welcome to our Midnight Mysteries Spooktacular Halloween episode. Sorry for the 25-minute delay. We had some significant tech issues on our end. On top of that, we lost our streaming guy, our mixing guy. He's wandering outside in the woods somewhere currently. And so we've been running back and forth. And then on top of that, as most of you have heard, Facebook is undergoing some major and dramatic changes, and they don't release instruction videos on how to mess with the new settings once those are out.
Of course.
So, again, welcome to our live Halloween episode, where we'll be taking your questions, your comments, and your experiences live and on the air. Mike, why don't you talk about why we got interested in the paranormal, or why the paranormal is interesting to you? Well, I catch up sharing the link with all of these groups.
First of all, can you guys hear us? I'm assuming you can. If not, say something. But yeah, how did I get interested in the paranormal? Well, the answer is actually you, Nathan.
Oh.
I remember when we were, we must have been, just shortly after high school.
Like 18, 19?
Yeah. I remember we were driving out to go camping, and Nathan just starts talking to me about this crazy stuff. But I mean, I wasn't like hesitant or weirded out by it. It was just, he kind of started asking me about these things, and we ended up talking for like 5 hours about just about every topic you can think of. And that's kind of what started it off, to be honest.
I think I was so excited that I actually called my mom to tell her about how excited Mike was. And our first conversations were actually around the Nephilim, I believe. Nephilim and UFOs, right?
Yes.
Nephilim as in the ancient giants of North America and the world. So for those of you that are joining us, if you would like to share your stories or your comments, you can either text our show's phone number, which is 780-932-1029. You could comment on the live video below, or you could message us through our Facebook page, which is at Midnight Mysteries Radio. Okay, folks.
They're saying my audio's a little low.
Okay, we're gonna try and pump that up. Again, folks, thank you so much for your patience. It's just been one crazy time trying to adjust to our loss of a volunteer, and on top of that, Facebook's new tech specs.
Hopefully that helps. I sound louder to myself, so.
Hey, Sandra, thanks for joining us. Amy, congratulations on your new baby. That is so excited. Okay, we're getting a few more people filtering in here. I'm going to pull up my script for tonight, but we wanted to give credit to Matthew from Blackbird Apothecary, I believe. Let me pull that up. Matthew and I have been friends for Blackbird Farm and Apothecary. We've been friends for a number of years now. We actually got interested in the UFO community together, and he heard that we were giving away some swag. By the way, we're giving away some swag tonight. If you enter a story, we'll be giving away a $25 Boston Pizza gift card, a custom Midnight Mysteries t-shirt, a customized Midnight Mysteries lanyard, button, and sticker. And now, thanks to Matthew's generosity, we will also be giving away one of the customized Midnight Mysteries no juice glasses or whiskey glasses or apple juice glasses. So
Yes.
again, there's no affiliation on our part with Matthew. He was just generous enough to gift some of these cups forward, and we're going to be keeping the majority of them for ourselves. So,
Oh, I see.
Awesome.
Caitlin says hi to me. I'm her dad. Hi, Caitlin.
oh, hi, Caitlin. Aren't you supposed to be in bed? Awesome.
She is.
And hello to the people that decided to host a bonfire tonight and to watch with a group of friends. Shout out to Mike and I from the cabin. We're actually excited we can make it to the cabin tonight because it's going to snow soon and it'll be more difficult to get out here.
Yeah.
But without further ado, why don't we kick off with one of our stories? Mike, if you could kind of just keep an eye out for some of the comments here and there. I'll try and keep an eye out through the various pages too. But this first story comes from Melissa from CAPI, which is the Calgary, Alberta Paranormal Investigators Society. And she said, about 4 years ago, I was living on an acreage just outside of Calgary. I should add that there was a fair amount of activity in the home. My eldest son saw a man walk from my bedroom into the hallway and vanish. If I were walking down the hallway or something and I saw a man walk out in front of me or walk out of a bedroom and just not say hi or anything, my feelings would be very hurt.
Yeah.
Continuing, walk out into the hallway and vanish. Balls on the pool table would roll around on their own, and you would often feel like you weren't alone. We heard our names being called, babies crying, etc. At this time, I had my sister and her son staying with me. On this particular night, my sister had gone out, and her son, who was 16 at the time, was sleeping in the camper outside for the night. So it was myself and my 3 kids inside, and they were all sleeping. It was just after 10 p.m., and I was making lunches for the next day. My house had an open concept, so the kitchen, dining room, and living room were all visible. As I focused on what I was doing, I realized that someone was knocking. It was 3 knocks. Then a pause. I'm not sure how many times it happened before I really started to pay attention. But once I realized, I stopped what I was doing and stood there, listening. The knocking happened again. Something felt very off. Why would someone be out there? Why so late? And there was just a general feeling of unease. My front door had windows, but I couldn't see anyone standing out there. Guess because it's pretty dark, right? I slowly walked towards the door, and the knocking happened again. But this time, not on the front door. It was on the living room window. I turned, trying to see something outside, wondering why the motion sensor lights hadn't gone on. I couldn't see any human outline. There appeared to be no one there. I was terrified. Stopped dead in my tracks and listened, hoping that I was just confused. That's when the knocking happened again. But this time it came from the area where our bedroom was, so I'm assuming that means inside the house. 2 of my kids were sleeping in my room, so I ran to it right as the knocking happened again on my bedroom window, which was ground level. But you would have to climb through a huge bush to get at it. It was then that I called my nephew, who was in the camper. I hoped he was pranking me. He answered in a whisper, "Auntie, are you outside knocking?" Chills still run down my spine when I think about that moment. So I got my dog and a golf club, and we went outside to get my nephew. I hope she had a big dog. I mean, a little
Chihuahua.
or a Bichon. Yeah, just... I guess yapping actually keeps away burglars.
Hey,
Pretty
I got
much.
a small dog, a Shih Tzu,
Yeah.
and he's an excellent alarm dog.
Yeah, that's true. Somebody sneezes outside and he's up. So chills still run down my spine when I think about that moment. So I got my dog and a golf club and went outside to get my nephew. I did a lap around the house. There would have been no way for a human to hide or get away out there without the dog or I noticing, but nobody was there. Once I got my nephew inside, we sat at the kitchen table. He explained that he had heard knocking on the camper and around the camper outside, but he couldn't see anyone out there. We heard the 3 knocks 2 more times after he was inside, and then it stopped. I considered calling the police, but without a visible threat, I thought they might think I was crazy. The next day in the light, I checked everywhere outside for proof of animals or humans, but found nothing. I'm convinced that we had some kind of visitor that night. but I still don't know what it was. Wow, Melissa, that's pretty intense. Honestly, it would be very tempting to move at that point. Considered getting your PAL license as well, your possession acquisition license. But Mike,
might be better than a golf club.
Yes.
Was this? Did she mention? Is this a rural property?
Yeah, I know she's by Calgary, so on an acreage just outside of
okay.
Calgary.
Yeah, that's scary, man. Like, for the knocking to go from the front to the back and then
To the window, to maybe inside. Like, I don't know what you do with that.
I would be scared. I'll tell you that much.
Moving on to some of our own experiences, I think I'd like to share one from when I was in high school. And I don't share these very often. Mike and I have a very similar approach to sharing scary stories. We don't like to, give credit to so much fear or give credit to the darkness. So we don't like the glorification of really dark activity. And of course, everybody loves to hear a ghost story or hear about, an old haunted house in their neighborhood, etc. But then there's those people who feel, tormented and they can't sleep. They've seen psychiatrists and psychologists. And so we're going to try and stick to the more fun, innocuous stories for tonight. One of my first real paranormal encounters was when I was living in my grandparents' basement. And at the time, I wasn't the best behaved. That's why I was living with my grandparents and not my parents. But I remember I've always had a difficult time sleeping. My wife can attest to that. I'm a very light sleeper. Now, I've never experienced anything like sleep paralysis. But one night I woke up and, you wait a few minutes to see if your eyes get accustomed to the darkness. But they didn't. It just felt so black beyond the corners of my bed. And there was a mirror in the corner of my room, and usually I could see, it was unintentional, but you could see the reflection of my guitar in the moonlight against the window, right? Or against the mirror, sorry.
Okay.
So you could see the reflection of the guitar. But at this point, when I looked over, just my eyes were generally looking around the room. When I looked over, I could see the outline of a body and head and ear standing partly in front of my guitar in the mirror.
Oh, man.
And just, it's
Skipped
my
a beat or 10.
inside dropped. If I had to poop at the time, I probably would have pooped my pants. And that was one of the more kind of visceral, physical ones.
Yeah. Yeah, I think of, there's a lot of stuff about orbs in the paranormal world. In pictures, there's all kinds of, floating orbs and things like that. Myself personally, I think the vast majority of those are artifacts in the camera, like dust and stuff like that.
Right.
I see it all the time on my baby monitor, stuff like that, little things floating by, lots of dust. But my first experience with an orb actually was, we were in the States, Nathan and I, and we were actually called down to come into a very well-known haunted location, a home that's notorious for paranormal activity. And I mean, the owners of the home basically rent it out so people can stay the night and get scared and stuff like that. But we were down there, and I remember, I think it was the morning. This was a day that the full solar eclipse was happening.
Right. Yeah.
So we were right in the center of that.
2017, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, I remember I was upstairs. Everyone else was downstairs. Oh no, sorry, you were upstairs with me, but you were in the bathroom. So I was standing in the hallway by myself. And to my left, there was a door against the wall I was standing against. And then to my right, in front of me, there was another door. So I'm just standing there waiting for Nathan. And just out of the corner of my eye, I see something moving. And so I look over, and plain as day, right in front of me, an orb comes out of that room. And it must have been the size of like a basketball or something. It comes out of that room, goes in front of me, and then goes into the room across the hallway.
Jeez.
And like, I'm literally just standing there. I wasn't scared. Like,
Yeah.
you know, we had already gone through and cleansed this place.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm literally just stood there and I was like, followed it across the hallway. And then I was like,
Huh.
okay, like, did I see that? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Nathan comes out of the washroom and it was very strange. Yeah. Like that was the first experience I've had with where there was an orb that I was like, okay, this is not an artifact. It's my own eyes.
Yeah. You're not looking through a camera.
Yeah. It wasn't light reflection because it came out of a dark room.
Yeah.
And it didn't move linear. It kind of went in front of me and then across the hallway.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It was very, very weird.
I like how you said we don't, oftentimes we see things like orbs on cameras. A lot I'm seeing recently is bugs on stationary cameras like doorbell cams and how many people immediately jump to the conclusion that it's something spiritual, right? And I think we do a disservice to automatically assume that everything is paranormal when it does have a clear explanation.
Right.
And I think the majority of things like UFO sightings, the majority of orbs are explainable. And I think we need to be strong about that so that the ones that are very genuine. I mean, even if, 9 out of 10 paranormal sightings are explainable, but 1 out of 10 is real, that's world changing.
Oh, yeah,
like that's
for sure.
textbook changing, right?
Well, I think that's, that's the difference is deductive reasoning versus inductive. And so a lot of us get passionate about things and we put aside the deductive reasoning where we look at the facts and we look at what's there and we put it together and let that speak. And we have the conclusion in our head with inductive reasoning. We have it there already and we're just looking for evidence to support that. So we got to be careful with that.
What's the difference between Googling why is this bad or why is this good versus facts about blank? Because Google's going to pull up every result that says why it's bad, and Google's pretty self-contradicting when it comes to it. But we can hop on to our next story. This one's pretty cool. This is from Rob, again another member from Cappy, and he was a LPN for 27 years. And he's ex-military and an investigator for Cappy. And he says, one of the first times I saw something that I could not explain was when I was in the Canadian Armed Forces back in the 90s. While with NATO, I participated in a big exercise just before the German unification of the country. During a night fire picket, I witnessed a dancing entity at an old German military base. Walking along the sleeping Canadian tent lines, checking on other soldiers and equipment during my 4 a.m. check, I walked over a small hill and saw someone dancing expertly under a bright light. When you see someone under a bright light, they appear as a shape because of the light. No obvious markings to identify him, but in uniform and no hat or beret. I watched as the soldier was going down on one knee and kicking the other leg out, then standing up with his arms extended to his sides. As he did this perfectly, he noticed me as I watched him. He slowly brought his arms down, looking what I think was my direction. As I walked over the hill towards him, looking down at the rocks, thinking, great, a drunk to take care of. But he was gone as soon as I looked up. I checked the line again, but nothing. I meet up with the other soldier on the fire picket with me, and we checked everywhere and made an official report to my superior in the morning. Nothing came of it. That's another interesting story because he wasn't looking for a paranormal encounter. Right? He was
just going about his duties.
Because you get a lot of paranormal investigators who go into a home that are looking for an encounter. And so they'll take, bumps or scratches and automatically go to it. And that's not to say those things can't be. But it's really cool to see someone who is just working on what he was working on
Yeah.
and encountering at that point.
Yeah.
Hey, Tammy, how's it going? Hey, Lena. Hey, Miranda. Hi, Beth. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, I always find, like, you raise a good point. I always find the ones where someone's just going about their daily life, and they see something unexplainable.
Yeah.
Kind of makes me think of our first Sasquatch experience. You remember that?
Yes. Yeah.
Out by Nordegg.
Yeah.
So we were just out camping. Were we even really? I guess we were kind of into that kind of stuff then, but not really.
We were just starting to get
Yeah.
into it. Yeah.
And we were out camping.
Definitely not the way we are now. Like, we
Oh,
wouldn't have been going out there to experience
No.
that.
We were just going out there to hang out. Yeah, we were tent camping, and I remember it. While we were in the tent, it started hailing, and just like covered everything with hail. And so after that, we came out, and it was super quiet and dead calm. And we heard these weird noises. I can't even remember, like, it's really hard to explain the noises we were hearing. It almost sounded metallic or something
Interesting.
up the hill, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're like, okay, like, whatever, right? We kind of just brushed it off. But then something started throwing rocks at us.
Yes. At the tent.
Yeah. And, like,
Yeah.
this isn't, a big place with tons of people. Like,
No.
this was early in the season. There was barely anyone there.
Yeah.
And, like, we knew that up this hill was just a mountain, right?
And it's fairly remote, too.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But, yeah, we weren't, just like that last story, we weren't looking for anything.
Yeah.
But then something started throwing rocks at us.
On top of that, this wasn't a squirrel dropping acorns. Like, these were sizable chunks,
Yeah.
right? One of our next stories actually came from Prees at Origin Hairdressers, and he shared that when he was living in the Philippines, he was in a room that had a laptop, and he was playing a game with marbles. And basically, the beds in this particular house in the Philippines had about a 2 to 3 inch clearance underneath them. And he
Okay.
was trying to bounce the marble up from the floor to underneath the bed. And at one point, this hand comes out and grabs his arm. And he freaks out, and he runs out of the room and calls his uncle.
Oh, my.
And his uncle runs in, and they pull off the bed. Of course, there's no clearance for somebody to fit
course.
under the bed, but it was like a skinny enough arm that could grab him just from sitting there. And his uncle didn't believe him. He didn't know how he could convince his uncle. His uncle said maybe it's a rat. And Pri says he just left it with that because he didn't know how else to convince his uncle that this happened.
Oh, man, that's terrifying.
Yes.
I've heard a few stories of, like, hands grabbing people and stuff, and, like, no, man, I don't want none of that.
No.
Absolutely none of that.
No. And when it happens, how do you go about telling people, like,
Well, right.
like, as much as we've done paranormal stuff, we believe people when we deal with them, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time, there's been some cases where it's been a mental health issue, etc. But
Right.
the majority of ones we've gone to work with have been very genuine. But, if I'm out at a construction site and I see a UFO, I don't know I'd want to go tell my coworkers about it.
Not
Like,
really.
It's a paradigm shift. It's like, okay, there's either aliens or there's secret government vehicles being tested in my area that I'm working construction. Like,
Okay.
or some sort of interdimensional beings, like, whatever. You're not going to want to go tell your coworkers you just saw a UFO, right?
No,
So,
like, the amount of times that when I've told someone about stuff like that, like, the looks you get, it's like, oh, like, some people try and, like, pretend they're like, oh, yeah, okay. And some people are just straight up like, that's weird.
We have another anonymous story here. This gentleman had an encounter inside his dream, and this lines up with some of the topics we've gone over before. He was in his dream. Okay, so he explains some of the backstory later on. So he's a barber, and he has a barbershop in his basement where he takes clients. And so in his dream, he wakes up in his bed and he's got a bunch of his clients around him. And he's like, "What are you doing here?" And they said, "We need a haircut." And so he says to them, "Go wait in the basement for me. What are you doing in my bedroom? Oh my gosh." So he gets up and he goes downstairs and his mom is washing dishes. And he somehow figures out that he's in a dream. So he decides in his dream that he's going to go back upstairs and go back to sleep. So as he's trying to go up the stairs, he feels a resistance. He feels like he can't go up the stairs at this point. And as he keeps trying, he's slowly able to make his way up the stairs. But there's that heavy weight against him. And he gets to his room, and when he opens his door, he sees himself laying on his bed. And he starts freaking out because he's not sure why he's outside of his body, but he's starting to try and push his way towards his body to try and get on top of it because he's got this fear that something's going to happen to his body without him inside of it.
Wow.
And so he ends up landing on his body and waking up from his dream. And as he's talking with his friends begin saying, maybe these beings in your dream, these clients, were actually trying to get your spirit away from your body so that something else could use it as a shell.
Wow.
And we know a number of people who have practiced astral projection that have had really scary encounters where as they've been out, they've come back, and as they're coming back, they've seen shadows enter their bodies. And he's never shared paranormal stories before. This guy has just heard about our podcast and decided to interact. But
Side note about astral projection. I'm just going to say, you leave your body, you leave it open. So keep that in mind, please.
with so many of the things in the paranormal realm, again, it's a fun topic to go over, but people just need to be careful because there's a lot of dangers associated without proper protection, without shielding yourself. And some people think that they have it down, and some people do have it down, but it can be very, very risky. So okay, guys, we have a text here saying, "This is spooky. I don't know why you decided to have it so late at night."
We planned at 7 a.m., but we were so delayed.
Yeah, we weren't 25 minutes late. We were
24 hours.
Somebody sent in some celebrities who have had ghost encounters.
Oh.
Just opening up the link. There's Kristen Stewart. Just kidding. We can share Kristen Stewart's encounter. This link says, in a 2019 chat with Vanity Fair, the actress opened up about some of her beliefs. She said, "I talked to them," Stewart said of ghosts. "If I'm in a weird small town making a movie and I'm in a strange apartment, I will literally be like, 'No, please, I cannot deal anyone else, but it cannot be me.' Who knows what ghosts are, but there is an energy that I'm really sensitive to, not just with ghosts, but with people. People stay in rooms all the time." You know, as much as I'm not a big, huge fan of Kristen Stewart, I think there's some great wisdom there. There's times where we've all gone into like a shopping mall or room or school, and we feel like a heaviness or a depression or, you know, a hurt, and it's just kind of like, ugh, like, what did I just pick up, right? And
I remember I was in Europe. I was doing just some volunteer work over there, actually, with an organization. And I remember I was in this place called, I don't know how to say it. I think it's Chyb. It's in the Czech Republic. And it's known for being one of the most notorious hubs of human trafficking, sex trafficking. And so we were shooting a video about that, basically, of exposing, the human sex trafficking there.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, I remember I was standing on the street. It was at night. It was dark. There was a couple of us just talking. I can't remember exactly what we were doing, but I was standing facing the wall, and the rest of the sidewalk and the street were behind me. And I could feel this person walk behind me before I even knew they were there.
Mm.
I was just standing there, and it was like all the hairs on the back of my body stood up. And it was just like, right away I knew like there's some dark, spirit, demonic stuff on that.
Right.
And I turn around and I see this guy walking away, with the hood on. Didn't see what he looked like. But it was like, I could feel it on him before I could before I even knew he was there.
Yeah.
Right? And so you get that with people, you get that in rooms, you get that in certain places.
Yeah.
There's so she's right. There's definitely something, that causes us to feel like that.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, I feel like Hollywood always portrays it in a very cheesy way.
Of course.
It's always the old house, and it's always
Yeah.
the Victorian era house, or it's a graveyard, right? But that's not what actually usually takes place in real life. We're just getting a comment to turn up our volume a bit, bump our overall volume a bit. So let's see if we can do that. But one of the things I think happens is, it's anywhere where something kind of evil has taken place. And I don't mean, something as simple as hurting someone's feelings. Although I think like a root of bitterness can grow from that. So Mike, it probably won't be the headphone jacks. It'll be the input jacks. Folks outside, just send me a message if that works. Please don't message me over Facebook, as that's what picks up on our live show. Once again, guys, thank you for participating as we deal with these different tech issues. But as I was saying, it could be something as small as somebody getting their feelings hurt with something like bitterness rising up, but usually it's from significant evil. You look at religions throughout history. You look at the Bible and how when blood has been spilled on land, there's a curse that comes with it. There's a curse that takes place in terms of a lack of harvest, in terms of animal reproduction, etc. And this curse can actually follow things generationally too, right? And so I think you see some countries even, including things that have happened here in North America too, where there's just certain humps we can't seem to get over because there has been atrocities committed in the past, and there is some sort of spiritual or physical curse that comes with it. But in terms of smaller scale, I think people use this word quite often. It's very trendy now, but saying I'm not vibing with that, or it has this type of vibes, or and I think people have keyed in on that too, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like you say, there's all kinds of words and ways people, talk about it, but there's clearly things that we can't see or necessarily comprehend that affect us in our life, in our world, in the realm that we're in, however you want to look at it. I always think of like, dimensions, and like to me maybe there's a fourth or more dimensions, and things that are there we can't necessarily see or even comprehend, right?
So. And it's interesting because you look at our physical world with the tech involved in it. And we were talking about this later, how our phone devices, our tablets, our laptops, they're all putting out information that we can't see. There's radio waves, there's HF, there's VHF, there's all sorts of different activity happening around us that we can't see. And I think that's reflective of the spiritual or metaphysical or supernatural, whatever you want to call it, that you could be walking through what seems like an empty void in front of you, but in fact, beyond our physical capability to see, you see all sorts of spiritual activity involved with it. And
Right.
we have to be careful, and you've pointed this out before too, Mike, that, there's not a demon behind every bush.
Right.
Like, not every quarrel you get into or argument is like a demon sitting there stabbing you in the back, right? But at the same time, if there's an issue that's happening generationally in your home or in your life, maybe it's time to start to consider that it could be beyond this physical world.
Right.
You look at some businesses that set up in the same location, and sometimes it's a bad area to set up a business because nobody goes there. I think of some of the businesses that got blocked by the Anthony Henday when it was first built, and I feel really bad. But other times it's like, why do none of the businesses that lease or buy this space succeed?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of these groups we're talking to are familiar with cleansing, and I think they have the understanding that there needs to be cleansing that takes place, whether some of them do it correctly, some of them don't do it correctly, or not, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you bring up the topic of generational things, which is a huge topic that we could talk about for probably ever.
Yeah.
But it's a big thing. You look at how a lot of even just paranormal activity, but you hear from people that have experienced what they call alien abduction, and how it's like it happened to their mom, it happened to their grandma, and it's like these things have gone down the generations, and you got to wonder, like, okay, why is that?
Yeah.
Like, is there something that's opening this family up to, attack from other realm or spiritual spirits, right? So it's definitely something to consider, if that's something that's happening in your families, is just to think about that and consider it as maybe something that needs to be dealt with.
Yeah. And I know we're digressing a bit, but there is hope, people. These issues can be addressed. So please don't feel bummed out if you're like, this could totally be what's happening to me with my inherited acne or something, right?
Yeah.
There's ways to deal with it.
Yeah.
Moving on to our next topic. This submitter has had an encounter with black-eyed children or black-eyed kids, BEK. I think this is actually one of the freakiest paranormal subjects I've ever come across. And mainly because the symptoms in pretty much 90% of every person's experience with them are the exact same. So this person, again, has experienced all the trademark signs of black-eyed kids or black-eyed children. We'll refer to them as BEK because that's what they're more commonly known as. But this person sorry guys, sometimes it's hard to read on my screen, out of southern Alberta, near Medicine Hat. Mike and I were just there this past year working through some activity with a group of people too. Let's take it a little rabbit trail for just a second.
Okay.
Lots of activity in Medicine Hat. What we found when we were researching Medicine Hat, because we like to research these places before we go to them, was Medicine Hat was founded on the First Nations legend of a tribe leader or tribe leader's kids or tribe that got sick, something along those lines. And as the chief, he went to this part of the Medicine Hat River that is known for paranormal metaphysical activity.
It was known for there was some sort of sea creature there.
Yeah.
Like it was in that spot.
Like a snake, a giant snake. And they believed it was like a demigod or a river god.
Yeah.
And so him and his wife went there, and they asked for a hat to grant healing powers, which is interesting. But hey, if you're going to ask for an article of clothing, I don't know what I'd ask for healing underwear.
Yeah.
Just healing whitey tighties. Walk into the hospital. Okay, guys.
All
I'm
right.
here, just tear away pants.
Wow, what an image.
Okay, so he asked the snake for a healing hat, and the snake demanded this chief sacrifice his wife to get this healing hat.
And his dog.
And his dog. Sorry, I forgot. Rip dog. So he sacrificed his wife and his dog, and this snake gave him this healing hat, and that's why it's called Medicine Hat. If you guys ever are there, they have this giant mural in their city hall of this taking place. Anyways, so black-eyed kids,
Right.
southern Alberta near Medicine Hat. It was around 11 p.m. when I heard a soft knock on my door. This is another person that remains to wish anonymous, and he goes to his door and opens it up, and there are two adolescent children between 9 to 12 years of age, so prepubescent, not teenagers, standing in front of me. They wore modern clothing, but their clothes looked worn, not new, like something you'd find at Value Village, or something like had been bought for them but had been used up until that point. Their appearance was all regular, except for when I looked at their faces. Their faces appeared to be palely white, and their eyes were completely black.
Oh my gosh.
And it wasn't the silhouette of the light. I had my front door light on, it says. And the thing is about them, they gave me a sick to my stomach, nauseous feeling like I've never experienced before. This person goes on by saying, for context, I was in an end-over-end collision on the white mud where I almost lost my life with my son, my 2-year-old son. And I didn't even get a sick to my stomach feeling like I did with this encounter of these black-eyed kids.
Wow.
Again, everything was normal about their appearance except for their black eyes. They asked if they could come in. He said he didn't respond right away because he was just too shocked.
I guess.
I guess, like, if I saw that, it's like, can I come in?
No.
It's like, yeah, anyways. So he didn't respond just because of how taken back he was and how sick he was feeling. He said his hair was standing on its end when they repeated again in the exact same tone. Can we come inside? And at this point, he didn't know what to say, which is what he exactly said.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure this encounter took place over like a minute, right?
But it probably felt like 5 hours.
Like, I don't even know if I would be able to respond in a situation like that. Like, at this point, they seemed more urgent and more aggressive when they said, can we come in? He didn't feel comfortable, but he didn't say anything as he partially shut the door just to keep an eye on them. At this point, they turned and walked away, and he shut the door and slid to the ground. He said he quickly got up from there and ran to the bathroom to throw up. He said for the rest of the night, he couldn't rest. He couldn't sleep. He was sweaty. He was nauseous. And this is so common with every single other black-eyed kid story encounter we've heard. This is new, though. He said his dog seemed on edge for the entire rest of the night and into the next day as well.
I bet.
Yeah.
Dogs are very sensitive to...
Seems like a lot of animals can be.
Yeah, I don't know. There seems to be... Yeah, I guess I've heard about that about cats, too. I guess I just hear
Or
more.
horses stopping suddenly.
Oh, okay.
Well, cats are clearly demons, and dogs are angels. And funny enough, my wife and I, when we went to Europe, we'd left our cats for 2 weeks, and we got back home and we pulled out our cell phones to film them because we thought they'd be so excited. And we opened the door and we're like, "We're home!" And the cats are just like, kept walking around like normal. Good to see you too.
So I wanted to go back to that dream you were talking about, the hairdresser dream.
Oh yes, yeah.
You know, this is, maybe it's just my experience, maybe it's not. Let me know in chat if you guys find this is the same. But do you find that it seems to be like right before you wake up, not like in the morning, but in the middle of the night, it's like sometimes between that waking up and still being asleep stage is when you see a lot of crazy things.
Right.
Do you get
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've had that many times. Like I remember when my my oldest child, when she was just very small, she was sleeping in the bed with us because she was having a rough night.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I thought I was awake,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw this huge snake like coming up the side of the bed.
Oh yeah.
And I actually like dove to protect my wife and child and said
Yeah.
like, watch out for the snake.
Right.
And then it was like, then I really woke up or something.
Yeah.
And like, but I actually was doing these movements and like,
Right.
you
Right.
know, it was crazy. But
Yeah.
yeah, I find like a couple more experiences like that, just, you know, it's like you're not quite awake, but you are. And so you wonder, is that spiritual or is that just your brain, being
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuck asleep or not? But
Yeah.
anyone else have that experiences like that?
And when you look at experiences like that, and if it's reoccurring and you suddenly not sleep very well and it gets extreme, you see a sleep therapist, maybe you end up seeing a psychologist, or even on the extreme cases, a psychiatrist,
Mm-hmm.
and medication doesn't seem to help, sleep therapy doesn't help. At one point, you have to say, okay, again, maybe this is more than just REM, rapid eye movement,
Right.
like
Yeah.
glitched rapid eye movement sleep, and
Yeah.
could this be something else?
Yeah.
Cool. Folks, we'd love for you to share your stories as we head towards the end. It'll be close to about an hour in 10 minutes. But the other thing I find interesting that contributes to Halloween and this discussion is that, as dark as Halloween's roots can be with Samhain, and folks, sorry, you regular Wiccans, you more nominal, less violent Wiccans, I'm not referring to your guys' holiday, I'm referring to the darker sacrifices of the pagan past. And I know that there's a number of pagan followers in our crowd tonight. Not referring to you, I'm more referring to the ones that have sacrificed babies and
Right.
cow and stuff. But we know that the veil can seem thinner during things like Halloween, but I don't find it's just Halloween. I don't find there's this escalation up to Halloween, and then it
Mhm.
kind of crescendos, and then goes back down until next Halloween. I feel like it's pretty consistent all year round.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I agree. I don't think I don't think Halloween is like the peak necessarily. I mean, there's plenty of dark spiritual dates on the calendar, whether depending on what different
Yeah.
groups have them, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think Halloween's really that particularly different than the rest of the year.
No, because you look at even things like Christmas and winter solstice. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we know that Christ wasn't born around Christmas. He was born around the summer months, and it was moved later. It's still an awesome holiday, but you can't say we're not going to celebrate any of these because of X, because these holidays have kind of gone through the
Mhm.
mill in so many directions. Lena, thank you. I think it's Sam Hain. I kind of butchered it. If Sawan is a different one, it very well could be, but thanks for pointing that out in the comments. What are you guys doing for Halloween? Do you guys have any traditions or rituals you like to do? Shout out to my own place of work in Millwoods. The church on 91st and Millwoods Road is having a trunk or treat night. So they're filling up their vehicles, they're decorating their vehicles, they're handing out candy. So guys, that's a free event. Feel free to drop by, take your kids there. It's a safe place because we've registered everybody's vehicles.
Yeah, it's not just random vehicles.
General, yeah, white vans in a church parking lot might seem suspicious.
Yeah.
But
I know for us, I mean, this year is different for me because my kids are getting old enough now, so we're gonna go and trick or treat. But
Mm-hmm.
Halloween can be a lot of fun. I know it. Some people think it's really dark, and if you look back at some of the different actual roots of Halloween, some of them are actually quite not dark.
Yeah, like All Hallows Eve preceding All Saints Day, right? It was very churched at one point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I totally agree. Okay, we have another story submission here. I was camping with my husband and his family at a small remote lake in New Mexico. There were about 10 people in our group and another group of 6 people in the next campsite. It was nighttime and both groups were doing typical activities, making s'mores, having a few drinks, and telling stories. When we all heard what sounded like a little girl yelling out for help. Neither group had children with them, but we were all positive we were hearing a little girl and decided to search the area we heard the noises from together. There was a field behind our campsite, and we all saw a very tall, pure white figure standing maybe 100 feet away from us in the field, making the noises. We all agreed this thing looked maybe 6 feet tall, skinny, and as white as can be. We made our way closer to investigate. Why? Why?
Well, that looks scary and dangerous. Let's get closer.
Okay, so we made our way closer to investigate. Whatever it was that we saw started backing off as we got closer, and it disappeared into the trees. All night we continued to hear a little girl calling for help as we tried to sleep.
That is so creepy. And the fact that they were all hearing it,
Yes,
I wouldn't know what to think. Like, the dad in me would be like, if there's a little girl out there in distress, I'm gonna search until I find her and to help, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
then the me
Yeah.
is like, okay,
Danger, Will Robinson.
Yeah,
Danger,
right?
danger. Yeah.
that's a scary and awkward situation.
Yeah. And it's always funny because when Hannah and I watch a movie like that, and like,
No, don't do that.
a noise has come from the closet of a home that is very clearly haunted in this movie's universe.
Yeah.
And they're like reaching out for the closet.
Yeah, or it's like,
So what are you going to do if you find it, right? It's like, hi, I'm Nathan. Like, shake
Yeah.
my head.
or those movies where they never look up when they need to look up. It's like,
Yes.
look up, look up.
Yeah. Or when as a viewer, there's going to be something right there as soon as they turn. And it's like, they have to know that too. Like,
Yeah.
you're stupid not to know that too, right?
Yeah, that's when I start getting my phone out and I'm like,
Just using it as a reflection to see. Okay, cool. Paul from Cornerstone Supernatural, excuse me, sent us the Cornerstone Supernatural website with some paranormal stories on it. So I'm going to read one. If you want to check out their website, again, no affiliation with Midnight Mysteries, but you can check them out. It's supernatural.com. This story says, summer 2018 in Edmonton, sometime in the early hours of the morning, Phoenix had been up late working at a friend's home studio when out of the corner of his eye, this is switching to first-person view, I witnessed an elderly gentleman peek around a doorway and suddenly vanish. Being the only one in the house that morning, he had resigned the event to a lack of sleep and an active imagination. A few days later, during a random conversation, he briefly mentioned the encounter to his friend and his wife. They casually informed me that they had probably seen the previous owner named Ray, who had passed away in the same room a few years back. They proceeded to relate to me similar occurrences. This is the security footage caught a few weeks shortly after my visit. You can clearly see the orb being tracked by the camera software. So there you go. There's an investigation from Cornerstone Supernatural. I know The Northern Alberta Paranormal Society has quite a few experiences like this too. Those are where we got our roots in terms of podcasting. But I heard another story today, and I think it might be from a TV show, but I'm going to share it anyways.
Sure.
So, not a fictionalized TV show, like a documentary on
Okay.
paranormal.
Yeah,
Might be on
that's
Netflix.
better.
Yes. Yeah, just another user submitted a story. His name is Tom Cruise.
X-Files.
Yeah, that's Fox Mulder. Okay, anyways. So this person had been living at their house, and they kept having dreams of fire in the closet. And this lady coming from the fire and torturing him in his dreams. Like, just, it was an awful experience, and it kept reoccurring over and over and over. And so at one point he ended up talking with one of the neighbors just randomly, who referenced a fire that had taken place in that house, and the previous owner, a female, had been killed in the fire by her closet. And it was just this sense of, I mean, his first sense should have been, okay, I need to move, or I need to
Right.
do some cleansing, but it was a sense of, feeling vilified, but feeling very terrified at the same time too, because what he had been experiencing lined up with the history of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of goes back to our conversation earlier of, some of these roots taking place in not just these old haunted houses, but in as much as modern homes or shopping malls or
Yeah. I find it more often than not, it's the person that's the issue and not the place.
That's true.
More often than not. I mean, there's certainly buildings and places that have had some crazy things happen, for sure.
Yeah.
But in my experience, it's quite often the person that's the open door and not the actual building.
Right. Yeah. And that's why there's hope, because if it is just the building or land, you can get rid of those demonic, hellish roots. And if there's a person, you're able to, look inwardly. You're able to look at your choices and go, okay, what could be opening this door for this further torment or haunting,
Yeah.
right? And being able to go from there.
Yeah.
So, if we don't have any more submissions, which I don't currently see on the various streams, we're going to call it a night. It's about an hour from when we started. So thank you everyone for participating for our live Halloween episode.
Yeah, thanks. And have fun this Halloween. Be safe.
Yes. Yeah.
Enjoy it.
Like our Facebook page at Midnight Mysteries Radio. For further episodes, we'll be figuring out our episode for November coming up. We're also on Instagram as Midnight Mysteries Podcast. You can also find us on Spotify and YouTube. And now I have to go physically end the stream myself because our mixing person is nowhere to be found. I mean, what do we pay him, Mike?
Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah. Well, we can split what we make off this podcast
Which is nothing.
in half and give it to him.
All right, take the walk of
Okay.
shame.
Good night, everyone.